So, as you can see, we have Paul Rouse and David Brady. How you doing, lads?
Good, guys. Good.
Paul's here specifically to talk about the Sky issue, right? But in particular, the grassroots movement that you've got going at the moment. I guess it's a grassroots movement if it's an online petition. Essentially, it's asking people to put their names to a petition to try and crystallise the opposition to putting GAA matches behind pay-per-view. That's a fair enough summation of what's going on?
It's exactly right.
Yeah, so Gizzy was on last week and he was talking a bit about just the difficulty that he sees the commercialism of the GAA and the damage that it's doing to the ethos, or what he perceives to be the ethos. And on the back of your piece last week, where you were kind of talking about, look, we need to agree what the parameters of this discussion are before we can actually have the discussion, we figured it'd be a good idea to come in and have a chat about it and kind of explain what's going on. So why now the need for the petition, do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's now the need for it. I would think that the debate has been going on for 4 years now, and it has been characterised by misstatements, by the inaccurate quotation of statistics, by claims that don't stand up, and by a general failure to explain why the GAA needs to sell its games to Sky Sports. Now, I want to be clear about this. This is not an argument against Sky Sports. It's not a criticism of Sky Sports or anything to do with that. It's a criticism of a movement of the GAA, which claims to be a community-based organisation rooted in clubs. It has never been explained why it needs to put its games behind a paywall. And I'm talking here about its championship matches.
Grant, so, because Dermot was asked on Twitter about the Air games, and I'm not sure about that, because is that any games behind a paywall? Is that the point of the...
I think this is the argument, this is the discussion to be had, but I think we start from the point of the Senior Inter-County Championship, which is the flagship, I suppose, it is the most important thing that everybody looks for in the summer, and all other competitions are now being... I think it'll be very interesting to see how this year goes, because I think that there are 3 leagues essentially this year, aren't there? Like, when you look at the Munster Hurling League, there's the Munster Hurling League, the National Hurling League, and the Munster Championship League.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that the league, having risen in status for, I suppose, at least a decade, is now devalued, or is now going to be devalued, at least for the top teams.
Potentially, because we've had a brilliant opening weekend, so you kind of hope that that doesn't filter into...
It will later on, though. I think later on, when teams are...
It'll be next year before it manifests itself.
I think so.
Could be even later on this
yeah,
league
it could be
campaign.
later this league campaign, or it'll be next year. But anyway, I suppose the point about it is, I think what we're talking for here is championship in the first instance. I think that's the first place the debate has to be had.
Yeah.
And it remains to be explained in any meaningful, coherent, sustainable way why the games have to be behind a paywall.
So the argument that had been put forward was that it was about the money, and then before one of the Dáil committees, the GAA said that it was deeply cynical to say it was about the money.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right? If they'd said it was about the money from the get-go and said this money is ring-fenced for these functions within the GAA, and we either can do without them or we can't, then there would have been, I think, more credibility to the argument.
I think then you can have a proper debate, because I think that then you talk about the value for money, and whether that value for money sits with the ethos of what you claim in the rest of your marketing campaigns and what you write in your books. But from the beginning, the GAA said it was first of all for immigrants, and in fairness to people took that at face value until you look under the bonnet and you find that what they've done is actually made it 4 times more expensive for immigrants in England to watch games. By the way, they took games off Premier Sports that were being showed on channels in Africa and in Asia, took them all off it, and at the same time put it onto Sky Sports. And there's a thing about GAA Go, which is this online service for people who don't know, an online service for Irish immigrants where you pay, we'll say, 140, 160 euros per year for it, except in Britain, because the Sky Sports games, including the All-Ireland finals, are not on GAA Go.
So you've got to sign up for Sky Sports as the...
So why is the GAA essentially doing that for Sky? Why is the GAA giving exclusivity to Sky when it claims to be supporting immigrants?
So the whole reason that you would do this, like if you were to take away, the whole reason that you would involve a party like Sky is to boost the value of your TV rights into the long run, to introduce a proper competitor to...
But there was a proper competitor there already.
See, I don't actually agree with that, right? I don't think that TV3 had put the requisite amount of money in to actually show that they were legitimate players for Package A, right? And in the long run...
Except that's been proven to be wrong, if you don't mind me saying so.
Well,
because TV3 have, year after year, since then, taking rights away from RTE. Look at where rugby's going this year. Look at where
they lost money on the World Cup. I think I'm pretty sure that it was break even on the World Cup.
What they're doing
and let's wait and see if they make any money on the Six Nations. I suspect that it would have been much more money to get Package A for the GAA than it would have been to get the Six Nations.
And the only thing that's a reasonable point. But what I will add to this is, in that first deal, if you look at the broadcast rights, it looks like that Sky paid about an extra $500,000 a year. Now, show me any sports organisation in the world that sells exclusivity to a pay TV company for that pittance.
Well, it's exclusivity around certain games, a small amount of games which aren't great, right? There's like a couple of games which are...
All-Ireland quarterfinals are not bad.
They're not bad, but we know from doing quarterfinals sometimes you get one-sided matches in those, and they had first pick, I think, which would have been good enough for them. But I think that it's actually a proper long-term you introduce, and this is the other thing which kind of weakens the argument of the people in favour of it. Like, ultimately you have to give Sky value for money if you're going to get proper money out of them, which means you've got to give them more games. And maybe if there's a Super 8 coming down the line, you know that there are going to be a lot of games. For example, on the final day of the season, the games are going to throw in at the same time. You'd probably need a second broadcaster to have those games, some of the games on that day, because you won't be able to show both of them.
So let's look at this from a range of different values. You look, first of all, at the broader broadcasting policy of the association, and you introduce a level of competition, and at the same time, they took all broadcast rights away from News Talk for radio matches and gave them to RTE. So RTE have exclusivity essentially in radio. So I'd say the policy in general is ill-conceived, ill-considered, and not properly explained to people. Number one. Number two, in terms of what the GAA wants, what exactly does the GAA want from broadcasting its matches? Just after the last deal, by the way, the last deal was for 5 years, not for 3. Incredible decision to double down on something in the way that they did, having said they wouldn't do it, then having said, well, we'll see how it goes, and the figures panned, like terrible figures, all across the place. More people watch a Oireachtas report in the middle of the summer, after midnight, than watch Cork and Clare play hurling. That's just a fact.
The 5-year deal seems
mad,
unusual under the circumstances, when particularly there's so many other players who might be interested in getting involved.
In a rapidly changing media world, Twitter. And who knows where this is going, but to lock yourself in for 5 years to a deal which at best was failing and at least was hugely contentious. And there is this notion, and Pádraig Duffy was in Off the Ball last week, and he continued to say that this was done for immigrants. I mean, like, that really is very difficult to listen to. Very difficult. Number one. Number two, Pádraig Duffy, after the last deal, came out and said he thought there were too many games on telly. Just after having put more games on telly, and since then, every single year, more games have gone on telly.
Maybe the GAA knew about the figures, and that they knew that it was going to bomb like it did in terms of viewership, and that way they locked themselves into the 5 years, because they were like, we have to get this money now, and if we do a 3-year deal, then this deal isn't going to happen a second time.
I have actually given up trying to second guess the decision making, because it is not based in evidence.
I do think that you need a proper competitor, and I don't think just having 2 domestic competitors is the way to. So if your sole interest is in driving value for your rights, you need an international competitor to come in. Because, for example, no one actually knew what was going to happen with TV3. They were massively loss-making, hugely in debt. We didn't know that the venture capitalists would sell out to Virgin. We didn't know that Virgin would invest and reinvest money. So there was a potential for that station to be swallowed up at the time that this deal was done, and I can see why you want another player in the pitch at that point to keep everybody honest.
But there is no contender for the A package. There is only RTE now for the A package. And because Sky can't get the A package.
Fair enough, but they might be able to make that A package just those massive games, just the semi-finals and finals or whatever is protected by the law, and then actually you can have all the other.
Actually, the law is really interesting on this. The law says that the only games the GAA can't sell are the All-Ireland hurling and football finals. The law utterly discriminates against soccer.
Yeah.
It is like absolutely bizarre.
Soccer has no political
Soccer can't
law.
sell its games to Sky. Soccer can sell no competitive matches to Sky.
But so my point, right? If your job is just to drive value, and you've got to get Sky involved, and you've got to get as many people involved as you possibly can, and actually split the games in a meaningful way to give them hope in the future, to frighten RTE to the point where they actually have to invest more taxpayers' money in spending.
Is that what you want?
On the GAA? That's a way of. That's why you do that. That's not necessarily what I want.
So can we look at this from a slightly different angle? What is the point of the GAA's commercial policies? What is it trying to achieve?
You have to assume it's to fund the development of the games. It's to be able to
Which
hire
games?
the coaches, hurling and football.
But at which level?
Participation. It has to be a participation, right? You would assume.
Yeah, so I agree with you. But on the one hand, how do you present yourself as a community-based organisation? How do you do that? And at the same time, put your games behind a paywall, and the stats of this are clear. Loads of families in Ireland don't have it. And I think what's really interesting, before it made this, when it made this announcement, both in front of a Dáil committee and repeatedly in the media, the GAA inaccurately quoted figures about viewership, for example. And it took 3 years, but I really admire Nicky Brennan, who came out and admitted that inaccurate figures were quoted. And that tells you everything you need to know.
What do you think?
You know what? You mentioned GAA Go, Paul. I have travelled the world with work, unfortunately, around the times of games. And I'm going to myself, I have a laptop, I pay a fee, whether it's a yearly pass or an individual pass. I can watch GAA anywhere I want in the world. Honestly, from a personal context, I suppose there's one county in the country that has been, I suppose, on Sky more than any of the rest of them is either Mayo or Dublin, because they're either one of your big games in the quarterfinals or. And for me, it galls me to ring home and say to my father on a Sunday evening, what you think of the game, because he doesn't watch it. He hasn't got Sky. None of us have Sky. None of the family have Sky. He won't go to the pub to watch Sky. So you're going to yourself. I honest to God, I think that the championship in Ireland, whether it's in it or not, we have 32 counties in it. I think it should be sacrilege. The league is different, but championship-wise, without a doubt, I think every single person, a young child in the country,
Are there circumstances where there are two games on, for example, like there will be, that are all thrown in at the same time, and you have one broadcaster doing it, and they just can't do it because they don't have, like, in that circumstance?
You know what? I don't know what a broadcaster is, because look, at the end of the day, we're going out now. We're on radio. Well, we're live.
Yeah.
We're on Facebook.
Yeah.
There's so many mediums, I think, now available to broadcasters, and to not just to big, TV stations, that you're going, you know what? Put it on the internet.
Always for
Stream
free,
it.
though. Always for free.
Well, you know what? There's no such thing in life for free, John. And you know that as well as I know. I benefit from the commercial part of the GAA. But man says, I do it, and I do it because I love it. And it's not all about it. I don't do it for the money. But I do think do you think that sponsorship? Like, sponsorship runs everything. Like, if you have the game, people will want to be associated with it. And that's the commercial part of it.
What's your opinion on the kind of AIB format? I know last year, for example, I wasn't around and I watched Glenbeigh compete in the Junior Club Championship final on YouTube, and it was a great service via AIB. And I wonder, is there a future in that, the whole advertising model, that you can just sign up, or not even sign up, watch it on YouTube for free, but you will have to click through a few ads, kind of like the RTE player, you'll have to sustain a few ads at halftime and stuff like that.
I watched Lars O'McHale's a junior club from Mayo playing the All-Ireland semi-final there a few weeks ago, streamed live. And I'm going to myself, you know what? This is brilliant. Yeah, I can watch it.
Is this not actually the same thing, though? It's putting your stuff for sale. Is that not the issue here? That's not fundamentally the issue here.
Well, that's what my point is here, that essentially it's not behind a paywall for the consumer, but it is essentially a commercial move. And if it's free to air, it, like as Ger says, it is still the GAA profiting from a commercial interest, but it's just not an English commercial interest or a British commercial interest.
I don't care if it's English or
Japanese.
Or Japanese. I don't care. This is not an anti-English thing, and if anyone imagines that this is an anti-English thing, it was actually the GAA who talked previously about the Sky having a problem with Sky's Englishness, not me. But
so what's the solution here?
I think this. I actually don't know. Is the most honest way to say it. I believe that every championship match that is shown on television should be shown on free-to-air television. That's the first thing I say. Now, after that, we get into an argument around technology and about the capacity of the GAA to deliver its games to its membership and to a wider public. Personally, you can see how the GAA can develop an online streaming service which can be made available to a whole load of people. But if you do that, you have to accept that there are large swathes of rural Ireland where broadband is so poor that is not going to be simple.
You'd hope that 4G, by the time they get their stuff together at the end of this deal, will be good enough to blanket the country, and that everybody should be able to get it by the time the 5 years are up, for example.
Yes, and really to be relying on AIB to do that. Really, that's. I mean, this would be it would enable AIB, and this is a side point, but it should be made. AIB, who basically robbed from 10,000 of their customers when they took them off trackers, wouldn't they be better off sorting that out?
I think a great idea, and I think what will happen is that the county boards will have exclusivity to do deals and rights from an individual aspect themselves.
If you do that, then the Dubs get richer and everybody wants to pay for the Dubs.
Already, isn't it, with the
you're going to yourself, you know what, if a county can look after their own rights and maybe develop their own form of broadcasting, that it could be a far greater income for them than what they're probably getting from the package at the minute.
Leitrim don't get any money, Longford don't get any money, Offaly wouldn't get very much money, Kildare would get a bit.
We're nearly back,
pockets here
Offaly after Saturday night, I don't know. The hurlers, definitely, maybe not the footballers, but you know what? You go to yourself. There's so many things that can be done, and that can be done the right way for the right people for the right reasons.
So I think that if they were to have come out and explained from the get-go, this is what we're going to do with this revenue, and we need to keep RTE honest, that would have been a far more open conversation, and everybody would have been able to go, no, we're not doing that because that's not what we believe in, or okay, I understand that now. And that's because I think that a lot of people do have a little bit of actually, you know, I do watch a lot of stuff on Sky for the people who do have it, or people think I'm happy enough in some instances, and then other people are fundamentally opposed to it, and that's fine. In a big organisation like this, you're going to have people on both sides.
And they do a great job. Sky do a great job. RTE, I think, do an excellent job as well. But as a man says, it just...
Nobody wants to say that though, David.
Do they not? No.
No, I don't think so. We have a thing here where there was this... it was repeatedly said in the weeks after, and by the way, I'd say this about RTE and TV3, it's not particularly RTE. I think they did an excellent job covering the championship. We can argue, disagree about what they didn't, but can you really say that Sky coverage has in any meaningful way transformed how we watch Gaelic games? We can argue about little tactics, we can argue whether in some instances it's actually worse, but really I don't care. I don't care whether you're like X pundit or Y pundit. I don't care whether we have fancy graphics or not fancy graphics. All I care about is, can you see the match?
And that's talking from someone that is a pundit. It's only a sideshow.
Yeah, it is a sideshow,
the minute the bloody ball is thrown up in the air, the minute the final whistle goes, what happens at half time, what happens at the end, is only an add-on to what really matters, and that's the game. And in any shape, form or sport. I agree with that. We'll have the Super Bowl coming up next weekend, and you know what? It's all about the game. It's not about the halftime entertainment.
Well, it's a bit about the halftime entertainment. It's a bit about the quality of the coverage too. I do think that RTE for a long time had their cameras in fixed positions, had the exact same format.
That had changed well before Sky came in.
Well, before Sky, but it happened because TV3 came in.
The ads that RTE made, Dave Berry's ads, unbelievable ads from the early 2000s. All that. This had changed. I mean, people look back. You're right about the 1990s. That's a part of technology. It took RTE with limited resources a long time to get up to speed, but the idea that RTE's sport coverage before 4 years ago was somehow...
Not 4 years ago, when TV3 came in. I think that they needed competition to get a kick up the ass, and I think that the Dave Berry stuff was great, but I won't
argue against that.
I thought he started doing that with the rugby first, I thought.
Yeah, but I won't argue against that. What I would argue about is the sense that RTE needed Sky Sports to somehow develop modern technology, as if they were going out with handheld cameras and black and white footage.
I do think when TV3 come in, then RTE, it's competition. Yeah, competition, whether it's on the football pitch or in the commercial space, in sport broadcasting, is good. There'll always be competition, because you know what? There'll always be someone that want to come in and be second best and try and be best. Whether it's from the Skies or the TV3s or the Airs or the RTEs. There will always be competition in broadcasting in GAA.
The one thing I would say on that, like, I disagree on the point of kind of analysis and enhancing the game. Like, I do think having a higher IQ with regards to your sport is always a good thing, and it helps with competition with other sports. But the thing I agree with you is, if nobody's watching said analysis and they can't form an educated opinion of a game, then what's the point altogether? But I do think that analysis does play an important part. But then again, your point is that it's not necessarily better in the first place.
I'd say you could go around the table here and you could say, I could say you like X analyst and I like Y analyst, I like tea, you like coffee, and really, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be a defining point for me. I don't really care.
It's not a defining point.
I don't really care what.
It only makes a difference on off the ball and who you have.
Yeah.
Paul, you're on your way to work, so we've got to let you go. But thanks very much for joining us. What do you hope in terms of the outcome of the petition is ultimately? Ultimately, you hope the petition is successful to the point where games, championship games, are no longer behind a paywall. But what's realistic in the short term?
I think it's very interesting. More games are going to go behind the paywall this year. Inevitably, the GAA have not come out and said how many more are going behind the paywall this year, but they are putting more games behind the paywall this summer. So I think they shouldn't do that. And I would urge people to come if they believe in this. You know, if people want to do it. I mean, there's a limited amount of things that you can do with a petition. No way near the number of people who disagree with this will sign it, or who disagree with the Sky deal will sign it. We all know that. But it's about making a statement to say, in number one, about what we believe in. And that's in the first instance. The second instance, what I hope comes out about this, is an acceptance. And an acceptance within the GAA hierarchy, who routinely say that this is not an issue amongst people. Well, that's just a denial of reality. Look at motions passed in Clare, in Roscommon, all down the west of Ireland, for example, of people who oppose this deal, from GAA clubs and county boards. This is something, although characterised by the Director General as whining and moaning, opposition to this deal is something from inside the GAA as well as from outside.
All right, good stuff, Paul. Thanks for joining us. And
thanks a lot, Ger.
If anybody wants to see it, it's on Uplift. Is that it?
It's on Uplift. It's on, I suppose, Twitter and Facebook, all around the place.